identity. So I'm going to tell you of God. I'm going to tell you of Lucifer. I'm going to tell you of Jesus Christ. I'm going to tell you of humans, and I'm going to tell you of angels. So basically here it's just a draft, something to make me see that I'm not forgetting all these things. I'm not juggling them up. I'm going up to line so that you can follow along, so that I'm well aware that you're following along. But it's just drafts of topics, of knowing which topics I covered. Yeah, it's just that that sequence that is on, so that I know that I told you everything. Otherwise, me, it's just the same thing. But otherwise, here's what is happening here. I'll tell you why the Bible is saying in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So basically here I'm telling you about God. I'm telling you the way I know God, me. Let's just say it like that. The way the book of Aobakwe knows God, Yeah, okay. And how he was created, however. So basically I just did a video because writing a book is, there's no need, and it's exhausting, but otherwise the book can be by what the book of Aobakwe, by whoever, otherwise it's those kinds of stuffs. So God's identity, the reason why the Bible is saying in the beginning there was a Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So here is what happened. In the beginning there was space. Now I'm going to prove it under science and under the militaries, under judges, those kinds of stuff. Now when there was space in the beginning, there was space, and when there's space, there's air. So wherever there's space is wherever there is air, and wherever there's air is wherever there is space. There can't be space and you say there's no air there. It will never make sense. There is a living that will always live there, same as an ant or a fish. It will always live where there is no air. Great. Now, on that part there, God, when he says in the beginning there was a Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. There was space there in the beginning, not the word literally. In the beginning there was space, and when the space was in parallel, space was in the same time with air. Because when there is space, once you open something, there is air. Otherwise, how did the balloon open up? There has to be space. Where there is air, there is space. Where there is space, there is air. It has to be like that. And so when it was like that. In the beginning, it started becoming like that. Space and then air. When it began like that, it got to this part whereby that space, that air, it is basically power. So space, air is a spirit. Air is a spirit. Air is a Holy Spirit. And since it is a Holy Spirit, for it to become a Holy Spirit instead of an evil spirit, there is nothing good out of evil that would come out about it. Right? And besides that, before there was evil, that thing, it had to be there and have no bad emotions there. For bad emotions to be there, they have to be there after good. That is why it was the Holy Spirit first. And that spirit, evil, came after. And when evil came after, it was this thing that the Holy Spirit, since it is air, it went along, tried to find life under those materials that make sound. Because it is a space that had to have a matter, space and then matter. There has to be space for something to exist in that space. For the space to be useful, there has to be matter. But the first matter was air. And so air, when it came in, it becomes heavier. And when it becomes heavier, it creates heavy things. Things that do not literally have a sound. Things that were literally like stones, metals. Quite like not quite things, but things that don't have a life. Even if we import life into it like a transformer, you would rather create it like a human image, so that it can look appealing. And so when it began to that part, when it came to that part, which is the reason why you'll never kill God and you'll never win God, which is the reason why the angels and all those other ones, they should just forget. Which is why at the same time I'm still the judge, the head of the judge, and what. Because here what this actually is I'm basically the fifth one is God, Jesus Christ, and then the Holy Spirit, and then the voice of God. The voice of God is that angel, the angel of voice, the angel that creates all these other things, and then they are all judged, those angels, all those other ones. Those other ones, the voice of God, I cannot judge the same as Jesus Christ and all those other stuff. I can't judge them. That is why I'm able to judge at this level. Well, I can, but not literally like those other ones as disqualifying them. That is why I say all this that I say, it will apply to you even at the end there. And now, when that Holy Spirit, which was air from space, that Holy Spirit, it looked, because it is an air. When it's air, it's life, right? Life, it is an air. So that's why when you say there's no air, you can't breathe, you can't survive. It is that thing. It will always be that thing, because that is how it is. It will always be, whether it is enough for this one or not enough for this one. Where there's air, there is life. And where there's life, there is space. You can't say the whole universe is existing and there's no life. There has to be a God who did not allow life there. You get that? And now, when that air is a Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit tried to check a rock. Have you seen Fantastic Four? There's that one of a rock. It tried to come out as a human. And even if it is like that, it will never be marvelous like a human's image. That is why even when it went to all those other obstacles, those matter that were not alive, and then got to this one of the flesh. Not literal as a flesh, but this design of a human under this kind of a flesh. Because it did not have to start with a flesh first, though it approved flesh, because it had to begin and end the story under the flesh, and the story under the rock, and the story under the what. That is why it's Alpha and Omega. It had to begin and begin. And notice, under the image of us humans here, which is the image of God, which is the reason why it became the image of God, which is why the Holy Spirit, which is why air, because air is the Holy Spirit, which is why it chose this part. And you see, when it chose it, it came to this part of, before it chose a human, it got to this part that it got to a sound of a rock and a matter. It just made a sound, it fell. It did not make a word like a human, like a living, like a rat. A rat had its own sound, a cat has its own sound, a car had its own sound. A horse, a dog, whatever, all the livings, they have their own unique sound, but it was not, and it is not, and it will never be unique than a word, not a sound, than a word, because a word is a sound. So it is basically a description of a sound. So you can say a barking, you can't say a sound. You'll rather say a sound of a barking, or a sound of a word, a sound of a rock. But for it to become a word, it was simply because of sound. Because sound began with space when there's air. When air gets in there, there's sound. A different sound that comes in. You can't say it was literally quiet. It was loud enough for those obstacles that were quite small, though they did not exist during that time. And so when sound roamed around, it roamed around looking for a better matter. That is why it began under matter instead of a living matter, but a matter of a rock, because it always had that start of a sound from a matter that is not alive. Because an air, when it moves around matter that is not alive, that is not of a flesh, up until it becomes generative and innovative and inspirational and start to change. Because it began where there is no living, but an empty space. Because when there's empty space, we know there's rock, there's no life, but there's air. That is why it began under those things, instead of beginning under a living of a cat or a human or whatever that can eat something and live. And so when it chose a word, it meant a human. That is why a human, it is only the thing that has a word. That is why a human will always be that marvelous image, and the image that will always be regarded as the wife of God. And so that image is basically this thing of, when you're a god, when you're a king, obviously you have to choose the best. You have to get the best, because all of them, they want you. And you also obviously have to reflect like that one who has that dignity. They just have to understand, They just have to understand. Unless it is you who feel like, man, I I just want that peasant, that poor, that slave, I want them to be mine. But not literally somehow, they can't force you to get a slave when you're a king, And so when it chose a sound, a word, the word, when it chose it, it was with God. It chose God. So whomever it chose, it meant that thing, it was God. And so power itself, when it is alone, space and air, when it is just there, existing there and just existing, it is useless. It wants an owner. Whether it is an evil owner or a good owner, it will always do its best. And so when it began under a good side and not a bad side, because for that thing to become bad, it had to become good first. Same as the rock when it's standing there, it does not just become bad. It is there, it is the kind of Abel already, it is a good kind already. It is all about after that what it will do, which is Satan after that. Goodness, that has happened after that. And so when it happened there, it got to this part that it chose God, the word was with God, which is that sound. The word, for you to take out a word, you take out an air. For you to take out a sound, you take out a space, which is an air. So when you take out a word, word is the Holy Spirit. Because you can't take out a word without having an air, without being alive. A rock, you can't just move unless, there was air moving around. Air is life. Unless there was air, then rock will start making sound to show that there's air, and then it will also produce its own air as it makes that sound. From inside of that sound, they should talk. You can feel the talk. You can feel that there's air that is blowing in your arm there. It is the spirit, it's air. So for a small thing, for a fly, when it passes, it will just run somewhere. They don't come here as you are talking like this. Even its sound is too hard for it. But with its air, that's why even when you have to catch a fly, you gotta catch it with tongues, because if you catch it with a hand, that hand, it has waves. You have to catch it with something smaller, something that does not have air, so that it does not feel the waves, because when you feel the waves, it feels the waves before you reach it. And so that is why the word was with God. And that is why the word was God. And so the word, for it to be with God, it was this thing that the word, it is actually the spirit, because the word is the spirit, right? It is the Holy Spirit itself. And so since it was with God, and that time God was not with flesh, he did not have flesh. God himself, when he's like this, he is the Holy Spirit. That is why when you have to look at him, he is glowing. It is that first spirit, that major spirit. It is power. God himself, he is power. Fighting God, thinking you'll defeat God, is basically this thing of fighting power. So it is basically this image that power itself chose. That I want to look like this, and then Satan comes and say, no, you don't have to look like this. No living, no other thing will ever agree to that kind of a thing. That is why power itself did not choose to have horns, but chose to have an image that is precisely right, unlike these other ones. And then after evil came in. Great. I will tell you the whole of Satan, of Lucifer. I'll tell you the whole of these other ones too. And so here is as God was created like this. God is literally the Spirit, the Holy Spirit himself. The Holy Spirit itself is God. And that is how the Holy Spirit itself chose that image of it looking as a human, but under the Spirit. That is why the Holy Spirit itself is the one that is doing all these other things. That is why the Holy Spirit itself is that angel of word, the angel of voice. Because the Holy Spirit is that power. The Holy Spirit is power itself. That is why everything that you do, you have to ask the Holy Spirit, which is the mother of man, the mother of powers. We like to be little zero, but zero is a very powerful number. Zero is very powerful. It is that part of no space. It is that part of space. Just having a space. A space gives birth to anything after it. That is why zero will always have a huge value, even if you just put one there and put too many zeros there, and yet still you are counting and you want too much. That is why zero will always have a value. It is only because of it means there is no number there. We have to have that symbol of number, that no number. Same as none under a word, which means there is no word. So basically, even if you say zero, it actually shows you that part already. And so that is how God was created, and that is why God chose a human image. So that human image, since He chose it, so that it can actually be this thing of Him knowing how to rule perfectly as the first one. Because this image, you see the image of a human, it's an image that can do everything. It is a marvelous image in anything, unlike a cat, unlike a horse. You can play around it like that. That is why it chose a living of a human, and that is why it chose the word to be the first. That is why even angels, when they have to be created, they have to be in the ideology of a human, though a human had never existed before. And that is why a human in a real core posture has to be treated like a bride to be, which is us. Because God is basically our baby daddy, a baby daddy whom is preparing the heavens for us, which is our new home, as we are going to be in mansions, the new houses with Him, moving in with Him. Because us as humans, we are the church, it being the wife. And the church, it being the wife, is this thing that the church actually is us. It's the symbol of us as humans. And so that is why God should never beat Him, and that is how He was created. And that is why He says in the beginning there was a word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. But it is that thing of that I that He is not literally correct when He says the word was the first. It is simply because of He is still correct at the same time, but it is not the first. And power, as long as it is in your hands, if you are its master, it will allow you to say and do whatsoever, however you like about it, as you please. Because you are the first living, you are the first God. Unlike power just being there useless, like God just sitting there and hoping to come out with something that will entertain it more. Cool. And so that is basically the part of God's identity. Great. I think this video, I think it kind of lasted longer. I don't know, maybe making these videos, 20 of them. These videos I can make them like 25. I don't know. If I add the part of Lucifer, now let me just add them. There's nothing here. It's fine. Now, cool. Coming to Lucifer. Lucifer is actually a friend of God. A best friend of God. So when Lucifer is a best friend of God, he's actually that friend. You see, when you have a best friend, you'll always honor that best friend. And when you honor that best friend, whatever it is that you do to that best friend, you'll always be in line with that best friend. You'll always respect that best friend. Even if they are somehow, however, even if you break up after a long time, you see them, and they were never your enemies from the start. Even if they were enemies from the start, some they still feel that thing for their enemies, even if they were never their friends, to feel for them and put them in the right places. And so here, Lucifer is a best friend of Satan. So God is a baby daddy. Lucifer is a best friend of God. Jesus Christ is a baby boy between us, the wife to be, the baby mamas of God. Jesus Christ being in between as our child, as our baby boy, towards our Father, whom is our baby daddy. There. Because women do call also their baby daddy's father, Baba. They also call each other mommy. Yeah, it's also, sometimes I do those things too. Yeah, it's just the same thing, it's just the same word. We can still also agree on that part. Cool. And so, the angels there, they are actually our uncles, aunties, and all those kinds of things. They talk for us in that scenario. And so when they talk for us in that scenario, it is also the roles that even when they play during the Bible's times, even when I'll be talking about them, you'll see they are playing a role as uncles and aunties towards us humans, as Makoti's wives to be, baby mamas, towards a prideful friend of our baby daddy, whom is Satan. That is why they say Satan, he hates us. It is because of that part there. Yeah, and humans are the wives. Cool. And so when Satan had a problem, Lucifer, when he had a problem there with God and his creation, it was this thing that Lucifer is this prideful friend. You see, a prideful friend, a friend that always knows what is right for their friend. Yeah, that friend. A friend that always wants what is best for their friend, like those kinds of parents and those kinds of things that are always bossy in their own senses. And so when it happened like that, Lucifer, whom is Satan, he was transformed into Satan because God did not want to abandon. God did not want to lose his friend, whom is Lucifer, whom he loved the most. Just because of those kinds of things of pride. That is why he allowed Lucifer to be turned and allowed Satan into Lucifer. And that is why even when he threw him on planet Earth, he threw him as Satan and not threw him as Lucifer. Simply because God walks with the Word. And when God walks with the Word, he threw Satan. Lucifer is still left there in heaven there. Satan is using Lucifer's powers, Lucifer's light, as he is here on planet Earth to test us, because God does not want Lucifer, his best friend, to go to hell. As if he did not know that his friend will go to hell. Cool. It was simply because of his best friend was arguing about this part of him having the right one. Is she the right one? Like, for real? You know, as God created a human image, it was that thing like this. Is she the right wife for you? Is she the perfect one for you? Like, is she like the right one? You know, before even Jesus was born, like, is she the one? Like, for real? Let me help you choose. You know those kinds of things. That is why God says Lucifer did not love us. And so it began to be a problem. They both had their own feelings there. That is why they also said it was Lucifer's pride that happened there. And so when it happened like that, it got to this part that it began to be a fight, because God felt like Lucifer was disrespecting him. At the same time, he noticed that Lucifer had a point at the same time. That is why he just did it like this to Lucifer in this manner. Because God is a fair God and he understood Lucifer's cryings. And so when it happened like that, Lucifer was put on planet Earth. God did not throw Lucifer on Earth. Please, let's correct that part. God did not throw Lucifer on Earth, on planet Earth. He put Lucifer, he put Satan, not Lucifer. God did not throw Satan on Earth. He put Satan on planet Earth. When he put Satan on planet Earth, he put him like this. He did not come with him and land with him. He put him. Because God, if he throws Satan on planet Earth, Satan would have died. let's not mistake those kinds of things, because God did not give Lucifer those multi-powers, those mightier powers. Though God did not take Lucifer's powers. The reason why he did not take him is because of he had to put Lucifer here. He had to put, he did not, sorry for that. I'm hitting the table too much. Let me pause this one. Cool guys, sorry for that. I'm recording myself and it's kind of balanced in its own way. So what I noticed that this video is actually like 35 minutes there. So what I'll basically be doing, I'll be making it topics, God's topic, Lucifer's topic, like that. I'll cut it, I'll get a video editor, those kinds of things to edit it. You will notice that I edited it somewhere there so that it doesn't bore you too much. It's still fine like this, but it's still okay. But this one I'll just cut it. I thought it was going to be like a 5 minutes, 3 minutes video thing, but it's, I don't know, man. Maybe it's because it's me who's talking, now I'm talking too long. Now, let's correct that part there. Lucifer was not thrown on planet Earth. He was put on planet Earth. That is why God did not take his power, so that Satan was put on planet Earth, not thrown. That is why God did not take his power, so that God can put him on planet Earth. Because if God has thrown Satan on planet Earth, Satan would have died. That is why it is this part that God put Satan on planet Earth, because God did not give Lucifer all those kinds of powers, though Lucifer was powerful. It is that thing there. Cool. And so here is what will also make you understand that God did not throw Satan on planet Earth, that he put him. God, when he got to this part of creating a human, don't worry, this thing is a sequence. I'll see where I'm going. It's only because I want you to follow along precisely, nicely. And so when God got to this part of creating a human, when he created a human, God came down and created the human from a sand. You get that? And so God, if he put a human on planet Earth, a human would have died. Because a human just from a small height, they can die. So God put Satan from him being in heavens there, not him coming here literally, because God did not love it since they were fighting there. It was that thing. That is why they were always fighting about it. It was Lucifer fighting for that dignity so that he can actually continue doing more, having more, and obtaining his knowledge more. And so, as it happened on that part, Lucifer was put here so that he can test us and see personally by himself that are we the right ones or not, since he was the one who was a blabbermouth, the one who was complaining too much about our uniqueness and what we deserved. And so when it happened like that, Jesus coming in, he came in as a baby daddy, helping us from that chaos of Satan, bad-mouthing us, along with our uncles, which are the angels that came and talked good of us. I'll explain to you what happened on the other videos. But talking good in the sense of they loved us too much, they did not want us to suffer that much. That is why also there are other things of eating that I'll produce here. You'll just see which things there are. Don't worry. But the whole world will eat out of it. Yeah. Cool. And then what happens here is that Lucifer, when he was thrown here, he started checking all these other stuffs here and got chance to do as he pleases and get a freedom enough. And so when a human being was created, God had to come himself and create Lilith first and create Adam too. So first, the first human, the first person to be created, it was Lilith. Same as the twins. You see, twins, they try to come together, but whenever they try to come together, it never comes alright because they become disabled because of what their parents are doing and what they are consuming there. It is actually a problem. That is why they actually have disabilities, because of all those other stuffs that they are consuming. That is why you can mostly see it when one is pregnant and is drinking or smoking and consuming all those useless things. Well, those things that entertain you, they are not useless as such. Yeah, it is those things that actually affect them, and it affects them after a longer time. That is why even when they actually consume them when they are not pregnant, it is still that thing that when you are pregnant, you don't have to eat those things. And when you are like this, and even when you consume them like this, everything that you consume, too much of it, overdose, too much of anything is harmful. It will always be effect, but that is what those things are doing. That is why all those things, they are there, and whoever tries to come along with their friend, they become disabled. And then as it happened, it got to this part that Lilith was created first, and then Adam coming the next. There are kids in this yard, so they basically kind of trying to disturb me so that I open the door for them. They say they know I'm recording. Yeah, but it's those kinds of things. Cool. And so when it happened like that, God came down and created humans instead. That is why even under the part of Enoch, he sent the angels to come and take Enoch to the heavens, instead of God himself taking Enoch and putting him there, because God still was too powerful, and there are other helps all around him that you can obtain. Cool. Yeah. This part I'll cut it there. Still fine even if I leave it like this. Cool. Great. And then on the next video, I'll be telling you of Lilith. I'll be telling you of Adam. I'll be telling you of Eve. I'll be telling you of the grave. I'll just see how they fit in here. Maybe I'll just cut or whatever. It's fine. But this one, I don't know. Cool.